What prompted you to come here?
Well, I had to come here after I finished undergraduate school in 97 because my family moved here in 1993.
How did you and your family feel about leaving your old country? And what's your old country?
The old country is Canada, not that old. My family moved because my mother got a job. She worked at a Canadian bank, and they bought a bank here in Chicago called Harris Bank. And so they had to move here in the early 90s. I think we were all a little bit sad about having to move, but also really excited because Chicago is a really cool city, and there was tons to do, and the culture was great. So we were a little bit sad, but excited at the same time.
How were you treated when you first arrived here?
We were treated normally. We felt like people here were actually very friendly. Um, Honestly, I think we were maybe more self conscious about it than other people were. Just more than anything, just our accents were different. But other than that, it felt very smooth.
What were your expectations of America and were they met?
Well, we knew a lot about America, the U.S., because growing up, we would take, it was normal for Canadians to take vacations in Florida, and we had our grandparents lived in Florida. So we spent a lot of time here. Um, I would say, so it didn't, we knew it wouldn't be that different, but we also knew that Chicago itself was very different in the sense that it was a big city. Even though it's about the same size as Toronto in terms of number of people, it just feels like a much bigger city. It was also had a reputation in Canada for being dangerous. Canada is very anti-gun, and obviously there's lots of guns here in the city. And this was back in the early '90s when Chicago was still pretty, had some very dangerous parts. Cabrini Green was around, so I think more than anything, we were all focused on being in a safe place and staying safe.
What were your fears and did any of them come true?
No real fears. As I said, I moved here after I did my undergrad. I was very excited to move here. I had job opportunities in Toronto, but I wanted to move to the U.S. I really liked Chicago a lot. I thought it was a great city. I loved being able to travel to other parts of the U.S. Living in Canada, traveling to the U.S. was very expensive because the Canadian dollar is worth 25% less than the U.S. dollar. So no real fears other than just making sure we could I could make a living, and it all worked out. I was so happy we did it.
How did your immediate family feel?
Immediate family was fine. Again, leaving your home country is never easy. We did have some relatives in Canada, but we also had a lot of relatives here in the U.S. So we were excited about it. We all looked forward to it.
How is your life different here than in Canada?
Um, I would just say there's a lot more opportunity, especially career wise. Canada, is a tenth of the size of the United States. It's a smaller economy. They're just it's a very natural resource based economy. There just aren't as many career opportunities there as there are here, and so um, my life is different because I've just had so many new opportunities work wise that wouldn't have been available to me in Canada. I also met my wife and your mom, Meg. I never would have been able to do that, and I feel very lucky for meeting her. So it's been great.
What were the pros and cons comparing Canada to the US?
Um, Pros. Like I said, lots of career opportunities. Just so many opportunities I never would have had. Available in Canada, working for bigger companies, being able to travel the world a little bit more easily. You're able to make a better living here because the cost of living is actually lower, in my opinion, compared to Canada. Taxes one of the big negatives of Canada is the tax rates are very high. So depending on your income levels, you're paying over 50% income tax rate in Canada, and your sales tax rates are 15% plus. So it's really expensive to live in Canada. So the big pro is there was just tons of opportunities, an opportunity, in terms of career. Um, um, I would say there's also cultural difference in the U.S. It's much more focused on individual freedoms. Politics, I would say, are a bigger deal here in the U.S. and politically, everybody's very focused on individual freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom to speak your mind and have different religious beliefs. Not that Canada's not that way, but it's so important culturally here in the U.S. So that's a big difference, and to me a big positive. Cons, no real cons other than I would say security, especially here in Chicago. Safety and security is a big deal. It's not fun to talk about, but safety it's just not as safe a city to live in as Toronto or Montreal, where I went to undergrad. I'd say the other con to the U.S. is it's very ethnically diverse, but compared to Canada, it feels much more segregated. In Canada, growing up in Toronto, it was very normal to go to grade school, high school, college, and have people from a half dozen or more different ethnic backgrounds. And not all of the U.S., not all of Chicago is like that. You don't have that level of diversity, and sometimes I think that leads to a lack of cultural understanding and mutual respect between different cultures. I think it's much more prevalent in Canada to have mutual respect, and to embrace the cultures of other people. You've got people of different ethnicities living in your neighborhood. It's very normal to go to restaurants of different ethnicities without having to make a big effort. It's just part of the culture and part of the community. So that's a con. It's just more segregated here.
What did you bring with you when you came, and was it hard to decide?
I would say I brought with me just a lot of optimism. I was excited to be here because this is where my immediate family was. It was where part of my extended family was, and I just felt like there was a huge opportunity to make a life for myself and my family that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to in Canada. So I would say, coming from Canada, you feel like you have to prove yourself a little bit more, not going to U.S. university or college. People don't, I went to McGill University. Lots of people didn't know what McGill was or whether it was a good school or not. So I came with optimism, but I also came with a sense of having to work really hard and to prove myself and to kind of, integrate myself into the community a little bit more, make an effort, because I didn't go to a Big Ten school, or I didn't, go to local universities like lots of folks here in Chicago did. So just a sense that, I had to really go and earn it.
Were there other countries that were considered, and if so, why did you pick the U.S.?
Not really. I mean, being from Canada, there's opportunities to go and study and work in other parts of the Commonwealth. So it's very common for Canadians to go to the UK, to go to London, England, sometimes go to Australia, New Zealand. That was possible, but realistically, to me, I always knew I wanted to come here, just because, again, my family was here, and I knew what I wanted to do for a career, which was business. And if you want a business career, there's just so much more opportunity in the U.S. It's just a bigger economy, bigger companies, a lot more resources available.
What difficulties did you encounter in trying to leave your old country and coming here?
I would say there were a couple things. One, so to work in the U.S., you either have to have a visa, or you have to have a green card, or you have to have citizenship. It was a big process. So I am still a Canadian citizen. I have not gotten my U.S. citizenship, although I've lived here for, 25 years now, full time. So the process of getting my green card was a big one. I got my green card while I was in college at university in Montreal. So I had to fly to Chicago several times and go and stand in line at immigration offices in the Loop at 4 in the morning, and in February, which was not fun. And go through the interview process and the application process, and it's a big process and a big deal to get your green card in the U.S. So that was a big task, and then the other task was actually finding a job when most of the jobs available to graduates of Canadian universities, at least when I graduated, were in Canada. It was not as common for American companies to recruit undergrads from Canada. And when they did recruit, they had a very small number of positions. I remember going to a presentation for one of the investment banks. I think it was Goldman Sachs in the fall of '97, and there were 250 students who went to that presentation, and they were recruiting one person. And so the opportunity to get a job in the U.S. was harder. So I had to come here without a job. I had job offers in Toronto and Montreal, but I knew I wanted to come here, and I moved here without having a job. And so was definitely nervous about getting my first job, but I was very lucky. I got my first job, and it just went from there.
If someone were coming to America from Canada today, what advice would you give them?
I guess I'd say two things. One, you have to embrace where you're going, but at the same time, I think you have to not forget where you came from, and to be proud of your heritage. In some ways, I was not embarrassed of being Canadian, but I tried really hard to be American. I think in some ways I tried hard to not, soften my Canadian accent, because, sometimes people would make fun of you, and it was all in jest, but, after a while you just want to be like everybody else. So, but at the same time, having been here for a while, there's lots of great things about living in the U.S. and living in Chicago, but I also realized there are a lot of great things about growing up in Canada and being Canadian. It's a very progressive country in terms of immigration, in terms of its political views, in terms of its diversity, in terms of its embracing, its relationships with the rest of the world, with non-Canadian countries. I feel like in some ways the U.S. has regressed that way, and it's become much more inwardly focused and exclusionary, and not as embracing and welcoming to foreigners and foreign cultures and foreign countries, which I think is really unfortunate. And so that's one thing I'm really proud of being Canadian. For being Canadian is that I came from a place that really embraces difference and diversity and inclusion. So I would encourage people to embrace where you're coming here, and take the opportunity, take advantage of the opportunities here, and to it truly is, you can make your own path here, but don't forget where you came from, and really retain those values of inclusion and diversity.
And finally, are there any customs or habits from your old country that you try to keep alive in the U.S.? And what are they, and is it hard to maintain these?
I don't know about custom, or I guess so we celebrate sort of Canadian Thanksgiving every year, and we periodically will go out for Canadian Thanksgiving dinner, which is early in October as opposed to or middle of October as opposed to November. I would say not, maybe we don't celebrate as many things here, but we definitely like to travel to Canada to experience, because there's a lot of subtle differences between Canada and U.S. in terms of day-to-day life. Types of restaurants. Not all the types of restaurants and chains that you have here in the U.S. exist in Canada, and they have their own version of those, like Harvey's Hamburgers and Swiss Chalet and Tim Hortons. There's tons of uniquely Canadian things that are not either here at all or as normally present. We like to go to province of Quebec and Montreal. It feels like a different country, even compared to the U.S. and Canada. It's like a different country inside of Canada. They're very proud of their French heritage there, and all the the winter activities that they have there, like tapping maple trees for syrup and doing. There's something called the Sugar Shack, which are these breakfast houses in suburban and rural Quebec, where they have these gigantic breakfasts of pancakes and huge omelets and maple homemade maple syrup and ham, and it's really cool. I love doing that stuff, and I love that we can go and experience that. So I'd say not as much that we do here, but try to go back there every once in a while just to experience all that.